Welcome to the Recruitment Mentors podcast. My name is Hisham Azuz. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Abi Dunn, who is the founder of 68 People, or also known as the Hospitality Crusader. Abi has worked in recruitment and specifically within the hospitality sector for over 20 years. And for the last 2 years, Abi has been growing her own recruitment business that supports hospitality businesses across the North. Abi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Excited to unpack what it's been like for a recruitment business owner that serves the hospitality sector, to say the least.
Yeah,
I'm interested to
definitely
hear
had
how
an
this has been.
interesting few months.
But where I want to start is, in your opinion, what characteristics and traits do you think make up a highly successful recruitment consultant?
Well, I definitely think I've seen people with different traits be successful in different ways. I think for me personally, it's about empathy and about totally being able to understand how somebody else feels, whether that's a candidate, a client, anybody. I think that is number one priority. Great recruiters can do that. And I think maybe more importantly, what I think is not a great recruiter, and that's somebody who's purely driven by, a placement or purely driven by a fee. And I know that's probably anti-recruiter, isn't it? But I think this is, in my mind, the best people that I've worked with have got a really high emotional intelligence and understand, that kind of care and compassionate side about, looking after them. This is about changing someone's life, finding someone a dream job, solving one of the greatest problems your client might have. So I think it's somebody who sees it like that, as opposed to a piece of data. Generally talking about intelligence, I think like memory plays a massive role, doesn't it? We don't talk about it too much, but if you can remember people, I know we've all got these flashy databases, but having a great memory is like genius.
Definitely helps, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's when I see the difference between kind of good recruiters and great recruiters, that you can just pull from the back. Oh God, I remember them. I remember them from years ago, and it also links into empathy, because if you remember somebody from years ago, you can make them feel good about getting in touch, going, oh, do you remember when we spoke? And they feel great, and it all kind of connects together. But yeah, empathy for me is massively up there.
Interesting. Do you think it can be just what you're talking about in terms of having an impact, helping change people's lives? Do you think it can be, recruiters can be driven by that at the beginning of their career? Because I think it does evolve, doesn't it? And I think a lot of businesses, if I went into a recruitment interview for a recruitment job and I just led with, I'm here to change people's lives.
Yeah.
So where, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. You've got to be, you've got to understand your numbers. Don't get me wrong. I've worked for businesses where numbers come first, and there's a part to play, isn't there? You have to understand where you are so that you can improve. There's no getting away from that. You have to measure everything that you do, whether you measure the softer stuff on the experience side and the quality of what you're doing, or whether you're just measuring revenue. But so you have to be driven and motivated by a target completely. But I think recruiters are a product of how they're being managed, and if you're purely managed by that number, you will behave like that, and and that's what's potentially given recruitment some of the bad kind of reputation that it has, that historically people were driven by targets and revenue, and at the cost of everything else, really. But of course there has to be a combination. We can't just be nice, lovely, airy fairy people skipping around finding people jobs. We've got to you've got to improve, and you've got to measure everything that you do so that you can improve. I'm a massive believer of that, and that's my entire career. I was lucky enough to learn that pretty early on, that there's what's the point in having any kind of something to work towards unless you can measure its success. And I think potentially it's where a lot of companies, maybe outside of recruitment, don't do as well as they could do, because they put in these great initiatives, but there's no measurements for success in there. But I also think they can't only be monetary measurements. You've got to have other measurements within there as well. But yeah,
interesting. So from what I can see, so you actually worked in the hospitality industry before you entered recruitment into hospitality.
Yeah,
Right, for a
and I
number of
do
years.
consider myself probably more a hospitality person than I do a recruiter. I have to say, I started collecting glasses as a student, probably slightly reluctantly, and grew with the business from there. And by the time I'd graduated, ran a site on Revolution, actually on Oxford Road. And when I look back now, I think, God, I was kind of 21 and they were putting me in charge of this, kind of £1 million turnover business. That was when I look back now, I think, crikey, I remember taking on my team to Amsterdam, which was very unwise. But yeah, so I've been a hospitality person kind of through and through, and it got to a point where I didn't want to work weekends anymore. I travelled around the country with Inventive Leisure, and almost got fired really for not wanting to work weekends anymore, because that's a prerequisite for running bars. And luckily my HR director said, well, if you go off and get some recruitment experience, we might be in a position where you can come back and recruit for us internally. So I did that. I left and worked for an agency in Leeds called SVB. I had a wonderful kind of 18 months with those guys, and then went back into Revolution as their in-house recruiter. So, and I suppose that makes, I think it's helped me so much to have that in-house role. I've seen both sides of it, and I've seen how, the budget constraints of clients. I've seen how recruiters kind of can approach you and treat you, and what I didn't like and what I did like, and that has led to me creating ultimately what the business that I want to have now.
That's an amazing experience to pick up and gather all that context, so you can really view what you do and offer from the client's perspective, because you've been in their shoes, right? So that's amazing. I guess what are the most common misconceptions about working in hospitality, out of interest, if you've been there? Because for me, it's like, I don't know. I respect anyone that does, because as you said, it's weekends, it's really tough work, long hours, unsociable hours. I don't know. What are the common misconceptions about working in hospitality?
Well, I think even when I was, kind of a general manager of these multi-million-pound businesses, I still had potential. My family kind of, is this a real job? I'm like, yeah, it's a real job. You're an accountant, you're a marketeer, you're a business manager, you're a people manager, you're a leader. There's huge skill involved in managing any hospitality business. But I think there's a preconception that you don't necessarily need a qualification, but I think that's a positive thing. There is a direct route from bartender to board level without any qualification, and that's pretty incredible. And I think the people within hospitality, are they are kind of so resilient. There's a lot of fun in hospitality, a lot of fun. And historically, I think people who do come out of hospitality and potentially try other sectors, it's a challenge, because we're used to dealing with these really kind of high energy, very positive, and actually very clever people. When I became a training and development manager for Revolution, and we did quite an interesting exercise with some psychometric profiles. My boss probably still remembers this because it cost him a lot of money, but I persuaded him to kind of get all our general managers psychometrically profiled, and presuming that we'd find a behavioural pattern between managers. We were looking for, we presume it would be this kind of influence or dominance, whatever it might be that we were looking for, and we thought we'd find compliance. Anyway, we didn't find any behavioural pattern between any general manager. It was all over the place. But then we tested mental horsepower, and actually then what we found was there's a real key correlation between high performing managers and mental horsepower. So there was, where people were doing really well, they were kind of 75th plus percentile in these mental horsepower tests. So I suppose my point is we've proven it wasn't necessarily about behaviour. It was kind of ultimately intelligence that was, and it sounds quite obvious, but and there were so many people within our businesses that were, they maybe dropped out of degrees or, well, I think that's a big part in hospitality. You kind of get into it and then you drop out of your, chosen degree because you find this great, amazing job with an amazing team, and you're up all night working and partying afterwards, and then you kind of, degree goes by the wayside. But I've certainly met the best people and the most kind of intelligent people in hospitality, for sure.
Interesting. That's sort of what came up for me. I think probably there's a perception that it's easy to get into and there may not be highly skilled people. Yeah. So, okay. So worked in recruitment for, as you said, 18 months, then went back into hospitality industry, then left the hospitality industry, right? Then it looks like you worked for 2 different agencies over a 5-year period. So what gave you the confidence, Abi, to start your own recruitment business? I think there's a lot of people that think, have that thought process of, well, why can't I? Wouldn't it be great if I could do all these billings for myself? What gave you the confidence to take the leap?
I suppose I need to say initially it was a very difficult decision. I worked with Rory from B Recruitment, and we worked together for a lot of years, and it was kind of like I was set up as a self-employed person, so that's how his business works, and we work under kind of his brand. And so I worked with him for about 4.5 years, and it allowed me to have my children and kind of have the flexibility that I needed. And I suppose it just got to a point where I wanted to do something of my own. I wanted to be creative and create a brand. In terms of what gave me the confidence, I've always been someone to take risks, and I think I'm very much on the what's the worst that can happen. If what is the worst that can happen? And at the time I had 3 children, and so I suppose it was quite high risk, because you go from a fairly regular kind of billing, and then you kind of start again. But I built relationships up, and of course you make use of those relationships. But I think it is what I've learned about anything from having my own business. You have to take risks, and you then you kind of it's like when I went to a client meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking me if I could do something, and I've never actually done it before, but obviously my ultimate answer was yeah, of course. And you come out of the meeting and you're like, let's work out how to do that now. But then that's what you do. You kind of build around it, and you just keep going. And I met 2 ladies when I first set up on my own, from a called Katie Green and Nikki, who kind of set it. I went on one of their courses, and I learned a lot about mindset, and they really helped me. I did a program with those ladies, and they were absolutely fantastic, and that they certainly helped me kind of mentally just know that as long as I had these things in place, then that's how you move forward. And there's a lot of that. Sorry, say that again.
I was just gonna say that was gonna be my question for you. I'd be like, where did this mindset of willingness to be uncomfortable, say yes, then work it out, take risks, come from?
Well, I kind of think anything else is boring. If I'm only thinking right now, but I don't think I worry about too much. And what is the worst that can happen? And it's not as if I'm financially supported by anybody. That's not my comfort blanket. I haven't got that. This is all me. And if I cock it up, the stakes are high. But I just have a belief that I won't. And that is by maybe just saying it out loud and planting in your subconscious that that's how you believe. I'd love to say I've read loads of books and I kind of meditate, and I am really bad at some of these things. One of the things I was worried you were going to ask me about is, kind of well-being stuff and all these good things that people do, like yoga and meditation, and I'm crap at that. I really am. Like I'm not good at kind of help or well-being, and it's something that I need to get better at. But I have an unwavering belief that I won't fail. I don't know where it's come from. My mum.
That's what I think. That's what truly matters, though, isn't it? It's having that grounding of, like whatever happens, I'm really confident I can make it work. And Karen, I think that's amazing.
Don't get me wrong. The last few months, the last few weeks in particular, that has been tested. But I think if and it sounds really cocky, doesn't it? But if I can't do it, nobody can. Why would I be any worse at it than anybody else? And I've been very lucky, like in kind of education wise, and have my mum constantly pushing me. I know I'm lucky, and I'm very grateful for all that. And that's definitely given me the confidence.
I think, look, what I take from that, which I absolutely love, is what you're also saying there is like Abi Dunn is completely responsible and accountable to herself to make this happen.
100%. I think my favourite principle is cause and effect. And, I meet all the time people where the world is happening to them. And, there's nothing that they can do about it. This is, woe me. I have people in my own family like that. But I've never felt like that. I believe that everything was completely within my control, and only then can I influence it and do something about it. And that's hard to teach other people, though, I think, because even my husband is not great at it. He gets frustrated by things, and kind of would be the first to blame someone else for it happening. I'm like, just take responsibility, come on. Hopefully he's not going to watch this back.
I think no, you're right. It sounds really simple, doesn't it? But I think it's actually really empowering when you truly believe that. And you're right. You can't push that and impose that on people. That isn't a way for them to take responsibility. Sometimes, and I've had to learn this when I've sort of come to my own realizations that, well, actually, I'm in complete control here and I have full responsibility. And then if my girlfriend might have some of those moments where she's pointing the finger at this or something, and then it's easy for us to jump straight away with like, well, look, what's the point in focusing on that? You can't control that. They don't need that sometimes.
Yeah, I know.
But for me, it's more about leading by example. It's more about, do you get what I mean? If Abi shows, like, I'm sure over the last 6-8 months, he's been completely in awe of how you've taken responsibility, and you could have sat there and gone, coronavirus this, government this, and it's more about sort of leading the way, and then you have those moments where it's like, well, look, this is what I've been talking about, right? Take responsibility. And that's where you have sometimes more of those breakthroughs, rather than every time they go, God sake, that person just cut me off on the traffic when I'm driving. It's like, well, what's the point in focusing on that? So to finalize that, then, like, what advice would you give Abi Dunn at the beginning of this journey of starting your recruitment business, knowing what you know now? What would you say to yourself?
What would I say to myself? This sounds really bad, isn't it? But I don't look back and have things that I should have done differently. Is that really bad? I'm quite a positive person, as you might have seen, and I did. It's probably easy for me to say what would I say to other people, maybe, because there's a couple of things that I did really well, and that was I didn't look at what anybody else did. I didn't get concerned about competitors. I didn't. They didn't even come into my sphere of thought at all, and they don't. And that's not arrogant. That's just I feel better if I don't, because I do start to maybe glimpse at what someone else is doing. I'm like, should I be, and it's not good for you. It's not good for you. So certainly that. And then, what I set up with this really clear purpose, and that is something that I think if anybody is setting up, that would be what I would advise, people to come up with and to stick by and to kind of to be unfaulted. And that's it's helped me certainly through the last 6 months and the most difficult time of the last few weeks, more than anything.
Why does that help? Because I think a lot of people talk about the importance of company values, purpose, but like, how would you articulate, like, why is that important and why has that helped you?
I think it helps me know constantly why I'm doing things, and it helps you make every decision. It's easy to make decisions in your business if your purpose is really clear. So our purpose is to change lives, to shape the industry, and to disrupt recruitment. So there's 3 elements to it. One is basically kind of candidate driven, changing lives and finding people great jobs. Shaping the industry is the client part of it, making recruitment in our clients better by giving them the right people. And then disrupting recruitment is kind of doing things, that might not necessarily been done before. And it just clarifies everything for us, and it makes it not about money. And I think that's where a lot of recruitment businesses, will or find it difficult or come across, in my opinion, wrong, because their purpose is making money, and that's never been my purpose. That will be an output of my success, without a doubt, but it's never at the forefront of what, it's never my first thought. It's a nice output.
Yeah, it's for me, what I've really experienced in my short career so far is that when you actually genuinely, what you're talking about, when you actually genuinely have a mindset of giving more than you take, you end up taking more anyway. Because it comes to you, right? So it's what you're talking about. It's that, well, actually, when we actually have this really clear North Star, it helps us make decisions. It helps us understand why we do it. And actually, when we actually really just focus on that, the outcome of financial, supporting my family, hitting our targets, it's just a prerequisite. It happens.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%.
So let's just talk a bit about, for the next 5 or so minutes, around like the first year, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that, I mean, like a lot of people going into 2020, right, this is our year, going to grow on what we've done for the first year. And then obviously we've all been having to deal with adversity. So I guess, how was that first year for you then? So you had the belief, you had a clear purpose. How would you describe your first year in being a recruitment business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I possibly grew too fast. I probably added headcount on slightly too fast. So there's one thing that I regret. There you go. I probably grew a bit fast. I got overexcited about maybe having this bigger business, or having a perception of this bigger business than I had, and added headcount a bit too soon. But we set up in January 19, and our sales built month on month right up until February this year. And so it was all great. We were doing kind of team events away in the Lake District. We were doing, we were being approached by clients. We were getting loads of comments about our marketing, and it was great. The team were, and they are now, but super engaged, and that was really important to me. And and I think that one of the some of the team came directly from hospitality, and kind of, so they were very junior from a recruitment sense, i.e. they'd not done it before, but that meant that we had this team of quite junior recruiters, but actually who was so passionate about what we were doing, and had the right the right frame of mind, and teaching people recruitment from scratch is actually amazing. It's hard work, but it's amazing. So we had a great time. We had a great first birthday party, and all was going swimmingly. And
what did you do revenue wise in your first year?
Well, so it's, for our first year we did 400k, which, so I suppose as an individual recruiter, I'd previously worked, and not being far off that. I think my last year as an individual recruiter before that, I'd dropped quite significantly. I was working from home. I'd lost my kind of mojo. I don't even know how 400k compares to other people. I don't know whether that's good or bad.
It's just good context for people. But I guess, like, some of the things that I gathered when I was preparing for this was, you really advocated that a lot of your, and let me know if this is true, but a lot of your business has come through referrals or recommendations, right? So you're talking about people commenting on your marketing. You got right people involved that have the right passion, etc.
Yeah.
But so sort of hearing about getting referrals, recommendations is really common, right, for recruitment businesses. Say, look, we grow by word of mouth. But like in that first year, and yeah, up until your first birthday, like what would you say was the most effective way of driving business through referrals?
I said, well, I think I had relationships with people, of some existing relationships, but also relationships that I'd taken from, working for a company like Revolution. You'd had so many people that had come through there and then gone on to set up other businesses. So I was lucky in that sense as well. But I think we set up incentives. We set up incentives around referrals. We made a point of taking testimonials at any point that we could and promoting them. So if you go onto our website or any of the information that we send out to people, it has, I'm a big believer in kind of transparency, and maybe to my detriment, I don't know, but it has who our clients are and which specific person within that business has said this about us, and we shouted out about that. But obviously referrals was a part of it, but I also think that people just came to us because we promoted a brand that people wanted to be a part of, and people actually we got quite a lot of phone calls wanting table bookings, which for me was fine because people thought we were a restaurant. And I was like, I'm cool with that. If our branding makes us look like a restaurant, that's fine. And I think people wanted to be a part of it and wanted to kind of hear more about what we were doing. So yeah, and it feels a bit like a long time ago because we haven't operated like that now since February, and that's probably the sad thing about it.
Yeah. So just let's talk about what's been going on from February. But just before we do,
yeah,
you may not have seen this. I mean, I saw one of the things that you met up with, sort of competition and network of other hospitality recruiters. So I'm assuming you've got a bit of an insight. But like, how much, like, what did the strategy look like for building your brand as a recruitment business? Because I think this has become more and more important. It's something that recruiters don't know how to do themselves.
yeah.
Recruiters are actually way more encouraged to be part of a recruitment business that values marketing and branding because they know how much it can help. Like, what were the sort of maybe 2-3 core things that you got right with your branding that really helped, that maybe people could benefit from listening?
Strategy, I don't know if I had a strategy when I set out, but the things that I got right, I think it was, as soon as anybody starts selling to me, I switch off to it. Okay, so that kind of traditional language, even if, and maybe it's within hospitality, people don't want it, or whether it's any sector, I don't know, but I couldn't bring myself to be calling people and saying, so how's business? It doesn't feel natural to me. And I know there'll be people listening to this going, well, that's what sales is. And so I'm anti-sales to a certain, traditional selling techniques. The word selling technique in itself, it makes me quiver. So I wanted to push. I pushed why we were doing it. So I know it's famously Simon Sinek's bag, isn't it? But I pushed why we were doing it. That's basically all I did. I pushed why we were doing it, and to some extent, how we were doing. I never ever pushed what we were doing. I never mentioned our database. I never mentioned our process. It's boring. It's really boring. So I pushed to our ways of working. We've got these 8 ways of working, and I pushed out our purpose, and I invested in, I found these a company called Lit Marketing, who were starting out themselves, and so a lot of the branding and the design work probably looks like we invested a lot more money than we did in it. We were paying, we were kind of getting some nice stuff designed, and it might have been 50 quid or 100 quid. It wasn't huge investments, but it looks great. And even me sitting on Canva doing something, it looks shit. So, putting some investment into that really looks good. And actually people have come to us and gone, oh God, who does your design? I'm like, oh, it's this Lit Marketing. They're brilliant, aren't they? But I can't thank them enough, but they were, they weren't a big marketing agency. They were led by my own creativity, but I couldn't do the design part, but I knew what looked right and what didn't. So I think investing in that side of it really helped. I forgot what your
Yeah.
question was. Did I
No,
answer it?
no, I really like that. So no, I really like that. It's back to purpose, why, and lead with that from a branding perspective, yeah. And obviously, it's also helped from you as a business owner perspective. And then I actually really like that insight that actually there are a lot of small growing businesses out there.
Yeah.
Try and speak to those and build relationships. They're actually, yeah, it can work for both parties, right? So I actually really like that. If you're a business owner, sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, I need all this, like all bells, all whistles, marketing strategy and stuff. Well, actually, there's probably a lot of people out there that are on a similar journey to you that could probably help you on the marketing side. That would mean that you don't have to invest as much straight away. So I really like that.
And I think we invest. I put a lot of time personally into our social media. So our social media account, until fairly recent, was run by myself, and I think that really helped. You know, so the tone of voice was me, and I think as soon as you pass it on to somebody else, that can get diluted. And you know, so I'm a big believer that if you're a founder starting a recruitment business, that should be controlled by you. It should be your thoughts and feelings, and that and that helps set the entire tone of voice of your business, and that then, you know, we all speak the same language in the business. I think if I asked now anybody within the team to take over the social media, they would write it, you know, in a way that reflects our tone of voice as a business. But I know it's sometimes difficult as a recruiter to think, right, what have I got to say about recruitment, because it's quite a dry subject matter. You know, what can I post on a grid every day about recruitment? I think that will be challenging. That's why it's easier for us, because we've made it sector focused as opposed to recruitment focused. We do talk about recruitment sometimes, of course we do, but it's sector focused, and putting that kind of you know, my entire thinking about it all was that this wasn't about driving revenue, and wasn't about opportunity. It was about how can we help our sector, how can we make you know, that's recruitment better within our sector, and that shows through our social media, and that's helped us build the brand.
I love that.
Thanks.
So Abi, share with us what you was feeling and what was going through your mind when February started to happen. And because at the beginning of this, like for me personally, I had a live podcast event lined up in March. Over 200 people paid to go there. And I remember having those conversations where it was, I sent an email around like who's not going to come because of this COVID thing, right? And then that drastically changed within a week, right? So in terms of the messaging from everyone, blah blah blah. So, like, just start by going there. Like, what was you like? How did you feel? And what was going through your mind when you started thinking, "Oh my god, this isn't a 2-week thing," which a lot of us thought it might have been. It's
Well,
like,
I
fucking
didn't
hell.
see it coming. Yeah, I definitely didn't see it coming, and I think I took it hit me when I had took one client phone call, and the recruitment manager said, "Look, I'm sorry, we're not going to pay this invoice until like this all settles down." And I was like, "What? But why? You know, what are you talking about?" And obviously, and then I suppose it just seemed to happen so quickly then that it was phone call after phone call after phone call, you know, of clients changing plans, you know, so within, I'd say 48 hours. And well, what we'd done, it was the Northern Bar Show as well, and they were on the edge as to whether this was going ahead or not going ahead. So we'd actually put in furniture into the show. We'd got all our stalls set out, and then literally it was pulled very last minute the day before. So then I was like, fuck, that's, you know, if these big guys are pulling stuff. And it wasn't just the fact that future work was cancelled within this 48-hour period. It was that candidates that had already started were being let go. You know, candidates that were currently in process all fell away, and then anything for the future fell away. So, and this was pre-furlough scheme. So, you know, we kind of sat there and, you know, very sadly, and I've got super emotional about COVID once, and this was on in March, when it was just so shocking. You know, we were all just so like, what the hell? Because the business had gone from this, you know, we'd had one of our best months in February, our best month, and then dropped to nothing. in March was just so bizarre, and we all sat around the table, kind of all crying. And weirdly enough, our contract for our office, we were moving offices, and it was to end on the 31st of March. So not only were we kind of sat basically dissolving the business, we were packing up the office physically as well. So it was like the most depressing day ever. And there wasn't a furlough scheme. So, so I, as everything cascaded, suddenly I was like, right, okay, we've got no jobs, no candidates, no one paying invoices. This is laying off people immediately. There's, what it wasn't a big enough business to say, okay, we can pay salaries for 3 months. And there's another regret. I should have saved my money. When you said what would I reflect back on it, I should have saved my money and built up a bigger buffer. But yeah, so March kind of changed everything, and I suppose the rest is history on that. And I think within hospitality, it's obviously you've got to have a certain amount of fight, and our fight was directed into helping the sector because we couldn't really help ourselves. Whatever anybody is listening to this and may think, if everybody's letting people go, everybody, the good, the bad, everyone, the opportunity for recruiters doesn't exist really. It's not as if you sell harder and you find those opportunities. There wasn't any opportunity. It was completely hibernated until July, when bars and restaurants reopened, and lo and behold, we had our September revenue was back to our February revenue. So we had this real lovely sense of, oh, this is going well, and then obviously it's dropped off a cliff again, sadly. But like I said to the emotion that I felt about it in March, I've become numb to it now because I don't, and I know we spoke about cause and effect and being able to make sure you have influence, but this is a bugger. I can't. This is, again, suddenly everything's going. How do you have no revenue, then your best month ever, then no revenue? It's crazy. And
so what I'm taking from that then is, obviously, like we all went through, really emotional. How can this happen? What the hell's going on? Processing it, basically. Like, is this real life? We've got Boris Johnson on the telly. I feel like I'm in a video game. Like, what is going on, right? And then, so the way you took responsibility was, right, recruitment, let's put that aside for a second, because as you said, the good, bad, the ugly, they're letting people go. There's no opportunities there. Let's channel all our energy into helping our industry. Why didn't you quit? Why didn't you go, right, I'm just like, because a lot of people would have gone, I'll wait until this blows over, or I'll, like you said, firstly, it seems like maybe you didn't have the financials for you to go, right, I'm just going to put my feet up and spend time with the kids for the next 3-4 months. But like, why didn't you quit, Abi?
I think I felt as I had a bit of a duty to people to, to show strengths and to show positivity and to show innovation. And again, that sounds a bit knobbish, but I meant to our candidates, really, because they were, losing jobs left, right, and centre, and we wanted to show, okay, right, let's help, and let's and kind of show what we're made of, really. And so, we adapted the business to supporting the industry, and that's. It's helped keep me sane, certainly, because I felt I've had some purpose during that time. Because we haven't taken any we've started building revenue again from July, when people started paying all the invoices, but that whole time in between, no revenue. So from recruitment, we pivoted and looked at things. I delivered lots of training to people. So we did. Kind of ran mentoring schemes. There was other little bits of revenue that we took, but nothing that could, compare to what we'd been billing previously. But yeah, certainly I felt as though not only did we have a duty, but we also had the ability to bring people together, because we had relationships with a lot of people across the city, specifically Manchester, and we had relationships with lots of clients, and so we could have that influence. We did lots of different things. Obviously, one of the greatest things that I'm really proud of is the No More No Shows campaign. Which was
just talk about that for a sec, because I wrote down a question around that. So I just want to highlight generally, like I think it's amazing. Again, you really showcase your mental resilience there. Where and I think this will do. Yeah, I think it'll make or break people this period, right? Where you've gone straight to what can we do to serve? Okay, well, what other things can we offer our clients and our network that is centered around them? If that's mentoring, if it's training, if it's putting people together, right? But yeah, so I definitely wanted to ask you about that. So like, it looks like you've given hospitality a voice, or you tried to give hospitality a voice, right? Which I think is amazing outside looking in. But one of the greatest things that you're proud of, as you just said, is the No More No Show. So just talk us a bit about that, how that came about and what impact it had.
So I'd seen a tweet from a friend of mine, Antonia, who works for Gusto restaurants, and she tweeted about when people had gone back to restaurants. I think they had 6K of people no showing that weekend, and I thought, that is, that's horrendous. After the journey that people have been on, I delivered all this manager training, and you just knew what these guys were going through. They were nervous. They were, there was so much going on for them, but they were excited as well, and to set up for service and have everything ready to go, and then to have people no show, when you're at reduced capacity anyway, was just horrendous. And I felt really passionate about saying to customers, what the hell are you doing? This is not cool. We knew that we couldn't have a client or a client-facing campaign, because we couldn't influence the technology that they use or the process that they use, but we could influence customers. So I remember, I think we were allowed out and stuff at that time. I remember sat in the boozer, little boozer at the back of Albert Schloss, and coming up with the artwork with some friends. And Antonio and I met and knew that the message had to be really simple. We had a conversation that said, look, if 100 people share this tile, which was 3 steps, rebook and we still love you, but make sure you let us know. And we thought, if 100 people share this, then we've done our job. So we did it in a thunderclap style. So we asked kind of operators and hospitality people in the sector to share this tile at one specific time. It was 10 o'clock one morning. And at the same time, I think luckily for us, celebrity chefs were talking about no show. So Tom Courage was talking about it. And Simon Wolf was talking about it. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. But the beauty of being a recruiter in it, which you don't say very often maybe, but was that it wasn't another company. We didn't put our branding on it, which I think was the reason it was so successful. But we also we weren't another company. If an operator had come up with this idea, like for example, Antonia from Gusto, if it was Gusto's idea, that would have been very difficult for other operators to get behind it. So the fact that it was a third party, was great. And I'm really proud of the fact that we didn't put our branding on it, because actually then we might not have got some of the press that, but I don't think it would have been as successful, and we ended up, people shared the tile, and it couldn't have gone better in terms of the results of it. I think we had 12.5 million Twitter impressions.
Wow.
We had a billboard, the Manc put billboards up for us, put a massive piece up for us in Manchester, and one of the I can't remember the building name, but we got 450 billboards across Manchester and London. We had a double page spread in the Observer. We were on BBC, we were on Channel 5, we were on Channel 4. So it was, it couldn't have gone better as far as a campaign. And actually, my friends who work in marketing were like, how much did you spend on this campaign? And I think it was 450 quid on work. And they were like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And we had an influence, and I'm so proud of it. And I think whether it was temporarily or not, I, from a recruitment perspective, made that move from recruiter into a voice that should be heard in the sector. And that's what I always want to do. And I don't think it's easy for recruiters to do that. but that's, we did that with that campaign, which was, great, and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I think that's amazing, and I think that's obviously one of the most amazing things about the world we live in today. Social media gets a lot of bad press, but also at the same time, when it's for good, it can genuinely have a real impact really quickly, and it can reach millions of people. So look, what I'd love for you to share then. So like, what have been like your personally like biggest challenges then, Abby? So we've spoken about how you've pivoted, you've sort of channeled your energy, but like for you personally, what's been your biggest challenge? I can imagine that you've got to be Abi Dunn, the hospitality crusader. You've got to show up for your team, and then you've got to be on point mum as well for 3 kids in your family. That must be difficult. Like, what have been the biggest challenges for you?
Yeah, I think when you've got it, when everything is going on in terms of the kids and homeschooling, and you've got it all kind of coming together, it's difficult to know whether to be kind of average at everything, or be great at homeschooling and not great at work, or be great at work and not great, so that was difficult, finding that balance, certainly. But I think the last few weeks have probably been the toughest, where the revenue's dropped off again, and you kind of feel as though, God, have I got any fight left? I've fought, and I don't think you can argue with the fact that I fought from every angle, and to then be affected by the curfew, to then be affected by tier 3, where we're in now, is difficult. It's difficult to, I've had to let some of my team go, and that's been, horrendous, because I made them a promise, and I've not been able to keep it, and that's the saddest thing about it. I kind of went into March thinking, right, whatever happens, especially when we had the furlough scheme, we'll get through this. I sent them cards during lockdown saying we'll get through this. I sent them bonsai trees, and that's not. I've not been able to do that, so that's very, very hard. And it is, as much as all this sounds quite positive, I'm not 100% sure whether this business will survive this, the next few months. It's unfortunately, I am, at the mercy of government regulations, and I'm not trying to blame somebody else for that, but if hospitality doesn't open or doesn't take revenue, then I don't have a business either. But I'm also very kind of pragmatic about that, and fact that, okay, well, we might have to consider making some very tough decisions early next year, but we'll come back as whatever we might come back as, or that's worst case scenario. But definitely just you have to just keep moving forward. But yeah, it's not all rosy and all these wonderful things that's been happening, and it's been great. But I have to be honest and say, of course I'm worried about whether this business as it exists, the 68 people will get through the next few months. I'd be naive not to be worried, but I still have the ultimate belief that I will be successful in something, whatever that might be in the future.
Yeah, I love that, and I have no doubt either. I guess to sort of put that together, what do you think what sort of thing have you learned either about yourself or your business that you think will stick with you in 2021 and beyond?
I really like writing. I've started as a way to kind of get everything down and maybe get it out of my head. I've started writing kind of different articles and blog things, and I've loved that. So that's I didn't think I was good at writing, or or wouldn't have thought that I was a writer, but I really, really enjoyed doing that, and I've had some really good feedback on it. So that's something I've learned in this whole time. You can find new things that you didn't know you were good at.
I love that. So one of the things that I saw you write was, and I think this ties in quite nicely around you being quite honest with us and going, look, I've given this a real good fight, but look, I can't be naive, and we're going to face challenges, and we're going to do our utmost to survive. But one of the things that we spoke about, and this article was around what you might end up doing is helping hospitality professionals maybe not go into hospitality.
Yeah.
Right, unfortunately, like, because these professionals, I'm sure you of course you can relate, right? It's like, well, I'm a bit of a crossroads here. I've done everything that I can to hold on to my career in hospitality, but I need to put myself first, and maybe I do need to upskill myself or try this. So I guess the article that I saw, I think it was shared, I can't remember the exact outlet, but it was about why hospitality professionals could be and why they could be amazing hires, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard before, obviously, like you said, when you've hired people for your own business, makes even more sense that they have the context of working in hospitality. But I've heard numerous times from recruitment business owners that getting people from maybe hospitality backgrounds is good. They've got that resilience, they've worked long hours, those types of things. But like, why could hospitality professionals be amazing hires, either for recruitment businesses or just in general, would you say?
Well, I think if anybody's considering it, there's a podcast by one of the Tony Robbins podcasts that features Danny Mayer, who owns a wonderful restaurant business in New York, and he asks the audience, or it's an interview, maybe not a podcast, but he asks the audience how many people work in hospitality, and obviously only a few put their hand up, but he challenges them. It's like, no, you're wrong. Everybody works in hospitality, because actually hospitality is 49% of what everyone does. Making people feel good is part of an accountant's job, it's part of a lawyer's job, it's part of everyone's job. So with that in mind, these guys are going to get to that halfway mark before you're teaching them whatever technical skills they might need. That service part of something, and again, going back to this empathy of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, is what hospitality people will absolutely nail. I think I mentioned in there, people are very positive in the sector. There's no, we don't have overtime, we don't have long-term sick, we don't, we talk in a different way. There's no, I don't think you'd get kind of complaints about things. Obviously there's good and bad in every sector, but if you meet a great hospitality person, the energy, the positivity, that graft is is amazing. But certainly that service part, let's face it, exists in every sector, and we should use hospitality people as much as we can.
I love that. And look, I don't want to impose Abi Dunn turns her business into hospitality rep to rep business, but if anyone is listening and like they want to connect with you and talk, like, no doubt you will know some amazing people that no doubt are having to really think about and reflect on their career, right?
Yep.
So if you are listening right now and go, you know what, we do have growth plans and we have taken on people from hospitality in the background, 100% get in touch with him. Whatever comes of that, right?
Yeah.
That's what I definitely encourage. I wanted to make sure we spoke about that. Look, I've got 5 final questions for you.
Okay.
But I just want to say, honestly, I think it's amazing how you've approached this and you really showcased your mindset, resilience. And from outside looking in, I think it's amazing some of the things that you've done to really give your industry a voice, which I think is one of the amazing things that the recruitment industry can do for their sectors, right? They know so many people, they're so well connected, and recruiters have every right to be that voice and that forum that champions their industry.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
So I have 5 questions for you.
Okay.
So the first question is, if you could change the recruitment industry, what would you improve?
Selling techniques, awful selling techniques.
Nice. The second question, if you don't read that, that's fine. We can work it out. But what book have you read that has had the biggest impact on you?
No, I do read. I did a lot of reading in my earlier career, but I would say probably 7 Habits. I love 7 Habits as a go-to book. I struggle to find one that's better than that.
Yeah, no, that is a really good book. This ties into your writing passion, but if you could write a LinkedIn post that could be seen by every single recruitment consultant across the world, what would you want it to say?
Every recruitment consultant in the world. Oh, I am to stop, and I can't do it yet, and I'm working on it. But let's stop the industry completely doing any form of contingent recruitment. If I could eradicate that, and so that nobody's doing any work for nothing, and it'd be sort of a post around that.
I like it. What did you spend your first biggest commission paycheck on?
Oh, in my own when I was in the agency. Crikey, I can't.
Whatever agency, your own business. What comes to mind when you think, yeah, I treated myself after
Yeah,
getting a big amount?
I spend money on kind of experiences, so holidays and hospitality. So yeah, definitely. I when my husband and I go away, we sometimes go away with our in-laws, and then they can babysit the kids while we bugger off to somewhere even nicer than we've booked for 2 days. So it'd be something like that with some kind of luxury 2-day break would always be what I'd spend any commission on.
Like it. And then final question is what's the ultimate goal for your recruitment career?
To change the perception of that recruiters have in my sector. I don't know if it's in every sector, but stick to what I know. I'd love to come out of this as like we said, as a voice for the sector, and someone to be heard rather than you're just a recruiter. And that's what I'd love to kind of leave. When I retire, that's what I'd love to have done.
Amazing. Abi, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.